This is a very important story. The important story. In the midst of COVID-19, it's an historic opportunity to look at the facts of the world as it is, and then to focus on the solutions to some of our greatest problems. In the 75 years since the United Nations was founded, the human race has never had to face a set of challenges like we do right now. But together, we can overcome them. On the 25th of September 2015, all United Nations member states signed up to the Sustainable Development Goals, a set of solutions for the biggest problems the world faces.
So this is a moment to recognize that the way we have been moving leads nowhere, and that we need to change course.
Hello from Sri Lanka, and hello to Sri Lanka. A warm welcome to all of you connecting with us from across Sri Lanka and across the world. My name is Saroshi Nandasiri. I'm the founder and chair of Women's International Foundation, and quite honored and privileged to partner with the Road to Rights in presenting to you this forum, the Social Forum. Social Forum is part of the Action to Impact campaign, where we talk about different aspects that affect us on a social platform. We theme this on the lines of Build Back Better and Sustainable in the post-COVID-19 era. Let me also say a few lines about the Road to Rights organization, who is organizing this beautiful platform. The organization is an award-winning youth-led voluntary organization established in 2009 in Sri Lanka, aimed at supporting and empowering young people through creating opportunities and empowering them with creativity, innovation, and also taking a more human rights-based approach towards peace and sustainable development. So they have initiated this campaign called Action to Impact to champion the sustainable development goals on a more grassrooted level.
In 1998, an 8-year-old boy, along with his siblings and few friends, inaugurated United Children, a movement with a vision to create a better world for children. He was inspired by the Mutuhara Kids Society and thus wanted to develop a customized version for his neighborhood. Then they went on to organize their first event, the Auruthutsava, and then an Olympics event for the kids in their area. As their scope expanded and aspirations widened, United Children named their organization the Teen Leaders in 2005, trying to address the issues of equal distribution of resources. It was a continuous process of development for his dynamic team, who figured that capacity building was another tool for prosperity for this island nation. The team continued their journey with roaring ideas and believed that change is a possibility. After much debate and brainstorming about the cause and effect on the society, the organization, which commenced as United Children to create a better world, identified and understood that the values they instill and capacity they built was a part of a greater idea of equality and justice. This deliberation that triggered in 2009 continued at length. They inherited a value system to abide by, that is the 30 human rights, and a plan that they adapted to, the United Nations Development Goals.
I was associated with Road to Rights from ever since then. I got myself associated with them. I kind of like a leech, so I was like, Ashan, what's happening with Road to Rights? Shall we do something together? As many as possible. And I believe Sri Lanka being such a beautiful nation, it's small and it's nice and good things come in small packages. I believe so it's actually easy for us to attain or accomplish all of these.
So we need to bring that desire and ability out of each one of us and transform that into an action. So the positive energy of young people and new ideas can truly make an impact to the world.
The People's Choice for the 2018 SDG Action Awards goes to Road to Rights.
I would also like to thank amazing and hardworking Road to Rights volunteers in Sri Lanka. And remember this, we are the last generation to act on climate change.
Welcome back. Today, through the social forum, we will be discussing to champion goal 1 to 6, where we will be talking in depth, covering aspects of poverty, hunger, health and well-being, quality and access to education, gender equality, and of course, empowering our women, which I also take pride in championing personally. Clean water, sanitation, all those aspects will be discussed in depth to champion these sustainable development goals. Fabulous. Since we all know the panel, the distinguished panel that we have for the social forum, and now let us begin the social forum, and a very warm welcome to Your Excellency, the two professors, and to Chavi, who are all here to discuss different aspects of goal 1 to 6 in championing these goals, where we actually talk about what we can do more to achieve them. Now to start off with, I would like to give each of you about 5 to 6 minutes for your opening remarks, where you can talk about, introduce the goals, each of the goals, and also you can talk about what you think of these goals, how you feel these goals have evolved, and what you have learned throughout your careers in terms of your work, respective work. So would like to invite the Ambassador, Your Excellency, Ambassador, to open up the forum with your opening remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, we have His Excellency M. Ashraf Haidari, Afghan Ambassador to Sri Lanka. He's also the Director General of the South Asia Cooperative Environment Program. And on this platform, he will be championing and he'll be talking on the lines of hunger and clean water in Sri Lanka, challenges and the way forward. Your Excellency, for the opening remarks. Your Excellency, you might have to unmute. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I hope my remarks will not go over the limit, but I will try to keep it as short. So first of all, I'm very delighted to have recently met the impressive and dynamic youth leader, Mr. Rashan Pereira, the founder of the Road to Rights, and to congratulate him, his entire team, as well as the youth volunteers across this Paradise Island nation who have been supporting the vision and mission of the Road to Rights. Today's event, Action to Impact, a youth-led national campaign, is an outstanding example of the much-needed environmental work done by the Road to Rights. It aims at helping accelerate the progress of localizing the Sustainable Development Goals in Sri Lanka, while directly supporting United Nations Decade of Action and contributing to the Global Week to Act for SDGs. As the outgoing Director General of the South Asia Cooperative Environment Program, or SACEP, with 8 member states, including all South Asian countries, I welcome with immense appreciation the goal of the Action to Impact national campaign to create a multi-stakeholder national platform to mobilize communities and bringing businesses, civil society, youth, government organizations, and academia, and achieving the SDGs. As I recently said in my World Environment Day message, in the year ahead, we at SACEP encourage bolder regional policy interventions and adequate investments towards the implementation of all 17 SDGs, with a special focus on sustainable production and consumption to conserve our nature, on which the health and wealth of all South Asians depends. At the same time, we call on the developed countries and multilateral financing institutions to increase their climate support to the most vulnerable countries of South Asia, enabling them to take needed mitigation and adaptation measures against climate-induced disasters. To that end, I would like to be more specific and highlight one of our key projects, the plastic-free rivers and seas for South Asia, or we abbreviate it as PLEASE, which directly contributes to the goal of Build Back Better and Sustainable in the post-COVID-19 era. We are grateful to the World Bank's International Development Association and Party for the Oceans for co-financing the $50 million regional project, which we believe will catalyze a regional transformation by supporting unique but scalable eco-innovation solutions. So as you know all too well, plastic waste pollutes air, land, and flows into river systems and ultimately into the oceans. And this poses national regional and global threats to sustainable development with far-reaching economic, ecological, and public health consequences. We need only to look around to see that the problem of plastic pollution has become significantly worse during the COVID-19 pandemic. The qualities that make plastic useful, including lightness, durability, strength, versatility, and low production costs, have shot up demand for its ever-growing use. But the mismanagement of plastic waste has created a mounting pollution crisis which continues eroding ecological systems like rivers and oceans. The global production of plastic is currently estimated to be around 300 million tons per year. 300 tons per year. And plastic pollution in the marine environment alone claims approximately 9.5 million tons, with 1.5 million tons ending up in the oceans annually. The South Asia region is the third largest contributor to plastic waste globally, and this is estimated to double by 2050 unless effective, tangible action is taken by all of us now and today. Knowing the gravity of the plastic pollution threat to our environment, the United Nations Environment Assembly has adopted several resolutions on marine litter and microplastics. The resolutions support the development of marine litter action plans, including an assessment of the effectiveness of or gaps in relevant international, regional, and sub-regional governance strategies and approaches to addressing the challenge of plastic pollution. To that end, the Regional Police Project interventions will be implemented in all 8 SACIP member states, including Sri Lanka, introducing new and promising initiatives that promote reduction of plastic pollution. This is done by adopting circular approaches where regional cooperation and coordination could help better recognize, share, and replicate good practice models to reduce the stock and flow of plastic waste. One such approach is supporting the competitive block grant investments to reduce plastic waste with the objective of identifying, verifying, and investing in circular plastic economy solutions while facilitating the exchange of knowledge, technology, and awareness of the proposed solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, the Regional Police Project adopts the AIR or AIR strategy, which was developed by the Party for the Oceans and launched at the United Nations some 5 years ago. It advocates for avoiding plastic wherever possible and replacing it with alternative eco-innovative materials, intercepting plastic and harmful materials for proper disposal, and redesigning material methods, and thinking even new industrial standards. Indeed, the involvement of the private sector is the key to successfully addressing the plastic pollution. That's why the Police Project will help facilitate the region's transition toward a more circular economy, increasingly free from plastic pollution. This effort should improve regional and national strategies, policies, action plans, and standards based on better analytics and through public-private sector engagement, dialogue, and collaboration. To this end, the Police Project will provide support to develop and improve national and regional plastic pollution mitigation strategies, policies, and industry standards. And as we would do so, the youth as a plurality in Sri Lanka and the rest of South Asia could actively participate in helping build back better. But how? The application of AIR or AIR makes it easy for you, the youth in Sri Lanka and across South Asia, to choose where you can make the greatest impact by avoiding plastic wherever possible, by intercepting plastic and properly disposing it of, and by studying and researching how to redesign material which, unlike plastics, is eco-friendly, thereby directly supporting the climate sustainable development goals. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak to you, and wish you very the best on our mission to build back better and sustainable at home and across our rich region. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you very much. Now I would like to invite Chavi Vora. She is the winner of WEB Wonder Woman Award by the Government of India and Twitter India 2019, as well as the curator of SDG 2030. So would like to invite you, Chavi, to do your opening remarks, and she will be championing gender equality and empowerment of women, and she'll speak in the lines of investing in women and girls to build back equal. Thank you, Chavi.
Thank you, Saroshi. Thank you so much. I want to thank Ash Pereira for inviting me to speak in this webinar. I thank all the fellow panelists out here. Thank you, everyone who has joined this webinar for a very enriching discussion, and I hope we all have a very learning and a very fruitful conversation today. Thank you so much. I have been working on women's rights and girls' rights for last 17 years. My work has been with rural women, with migrant women, with women in informal sector, women, of course, in urban slums across India. And I know that when we entered pandemic in 2019 last year, already the hard work, the painstakingly, the nations, the CSOs, INGOs had come together to bring some kind of equality between the genders, but it was still skewed. We already know that. So what did pandemic do? Pandemic just pushed it much further down. We know that, and it's just not for the women women who are part of a more privileged section of the society. It's worse for the women who are marginalized in a vulnerable portion of our society. The health risk increase tremendously, be it a general health checkup, maternal and sexual health, where many maternal deaths happen. There were unwanted pregnancy, there were unsafe abortions, the vaccination, the disruption of health services across nations were huge, especially for the developing countries. And we know that many women suffered. And I'm speaking really from the data, because I work directly with our women across India. And it was just not physical health, it was also mental health. The abuse increase, we know gender-based violence increase behind those doors. It was locked down, women were inside, there were small rooms, where they come from. They faced lots of abuse there, and it was hugely detrimental to their mental well-being, their wellness, that suffered. Not last and least, but we all know that female labor force participation tremendously and adversely got affected. Many women had to leave work. Already, women are a huge 75% of the women in the world are part of unpaid care. They do that. We all know that, be it raising children, be it domestic work. So what did pandemic do? We know that we had to work from home. The entire family had to. So all the care part, just not of the child, but also any sick person in the family. It fell on the shoulders of women, and just not the women. Here, the young girls. They had to take care of their siblings, their family members as well. We know that women and girls from the marginalized segment of our society have to really, take the burden of much more than normally what the middle class or the higher middle class does. So it fell on them. So what did it lead to? The disruption on the education, the discontinuity of the education. That's what happened. They had to leave work already uh, in rural India, especially, and even here in slums in across cities. It's so difficult to get a girl continue with her education with pandemic and lockdown with the burden of care. It came down. The girls were no longer were part of the formal education system. They were not accessible to a lot of mobile phones, the smartphones, and if the phones were there, it was more for the boys. It was not for they were the more privileged one. It is sad, but these are very stark realities of the times we live in, and pandemic just pushed it further down. The entire paradigm shifted much more down towards pushing women and girls in poverty. So with that, I just feel that it is so important today that we see the entire thing from the gender lens. There was a recent study which I was reading that if we invest on women work participation, the GDPs of the nations will increase at least to 16, much more higher than 16%. My friends here, I don't think there is a debate about this, that a woman bring so much to this world. It's like, we have two eyes, and both eyes are important, and that's how you see the entire holistic picture of the world. That's how we see that. And investing in the young girls who will be the productive individuals, who will be just not it's just not being an individual. She will be impacting the lives of generation ahead. She is the caretaker. She is the one who's going to raise those children. So investing in her, strengthening her, is so much more important at this point, especially where we are facing security issues, we are facing health issues, we are facing huge violence. Already we have to look at the entire paradigm from the gender lens today, and do much more, budget funds much more, do more, put more investment on the tools of monitoring and evaluation, where we have stricter surveillance on that. Those provisions are reaching the marginalized segment of our society. So with that, I will just end here, and I look forward to discussing more on this. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chavi. And just to add to what Chavi just said, in Sri Lanka, we have about 52% women from out of the whole population in Sri Lanka. And we only have 1 to 3 participation in the world of work. And also, if you really look, from all the households in Sri Lanka, 25%, that's 1/4, are led by women. This is indirectly, you could say that this is a result of the 30-year war, and also the single mom concept is on the rise. This could be a result of violence, result of women being more independent, a lot of reasons. 25% of Sri Lankan families are led by women. And also, if you look at in terms of entrepreneurship, Sri Lankan economy is driven by SMEs, and they represent 50% of Sri Lankan economy, which is like our economy is quite concise, which is around $85 billion US. Out of that, 50% is generated by SMEs, and out of that, 25%, it's a small amount, but considerable amount, by women. And also, if you look at like the income, more foreign exchange generating sectors in the economy, like the foreign employment in terms of garment industry, over 70% are women. So it's quite a important segment. Inclusion, protection is quite important. Thank you so much, Avi, for that wonderful opening remarks. Now I would like to invite Professor Siri Hettige. Professor Siri Hettige is the Professor Emeritus of Sociology from the University of Colombo, and Professor will be talking in the lines of the impact of COVID-19, how it has affected our education system and how to restore. Professor, would like to invite you. It's such an honor to have you on this forum as well, Professor. So would love to hear your speech as well. So over to you, Professor, for your opening remarks. Professor, you might have to unmute. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I would like to begin by thanking Hassan for giving me this opportunity to, say, say a few words at a forum which I think is led by young people. And I'm very much, interested in the activities of young people because they, really play a catalytic role in any society, whether it is for the better or for the worse. But nevertheless, the kind of work that this particular, initiative is engaging is very much needed, particularly at a time like this. And I think young people certainly have to play a very important role because it is their future that we are talking about. When we talk about the future of the world, future of the, the society that we are living in, we are basically talking about young people playing a very, very significant part. Of course, I always talk about young people and education because I see the nexus between the two, which is very, very important, not just for Sri Lanka, but for almost every part of the world. I also want to say that that in Sri Lanka, people have been basically concentrating on young people for a long time for various reasons. I remember as a young undergraduate in the University of Colombo, when 1971 JVP-led youth uprising just started. And I think that really signaled the kind of role that young people might play in case their desires, their expectations, and their needs are neglected. And then, of course, everybody knows what happened thereafter. In mid-1970s, we had the youth uprising once again in a different form in the north and east, which led to the war that lasted for 30 years, and that certainly had a huge impact not just on young people, but on the entire society and, of course, the economy and everything else. So, and then, having realized the importance of the role of young people in any society, for that matter, of course, in Sri Lanka, we basically launched an initiative called the National Youth Survey. And this was done in 2009. And actually, this was done mainly because already we had seen so much mayhem in this country as a result of political violence that impacted on every segment of society. And that initiative actually basically drew the attention of different stakeholders in society to look at actual situation in a country in terms of data. We can have our opinions, we can have our impressions, we can have our ideas, but I think as a sociologist, I would say that we have to be data driven, because it's not only in sociology, in any field, I mean, for that matter, even the present pandemic is very much discussed in terms of data. So, so I don't have to, emphasize the importance of data in this sense. So we generated a national database, and that database enlightened all of us on the state of young population in Sri Lanka in terms of how they relate to education, how they relate to everything else, whether it is health, whether it is, politics, whether it is culture or whatever. So that's the background against which I'll be talking about, education, because education, I think, is really a cross-cutting issue, and it is, it can be looked at from different angles, but certainly, we have to have a very, holistic perspective on education, because I see increasingly education is being perceived by many people in very instrumentalist terms, as a means to an end, as a way of, uh, getting what you want, in your personal life, whether it's employment, whether it is, recognition, whether it is power, whether it is, anything else. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that education has to be looked at from a holistic angle. So, then when we talk about, when we talk about young people and education, we have to look at it from a holistic angle, because what we see around the world today is very much, part of this discourse that I'm talking about. So let's, have that discussion later on. But for the moment, I'm very pleased to be part of this panel and contribute in whatever way I can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Now I take the privilege in inviting Professor Manoj Veerasinghe, consultant community physician, professor and head of the Department of Community Medicine, Faculty of Medicine, University of Colombo, Sri Lanka. And Professor will talk in the light of the importance and the impact of having a good healthcare system, and the importance of investing in wellness and mindfulness. Professor, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much to giving me this opportunity. And basically, it's a good initiative to have a discussion and a dialogue on issues that are not openly discussed, and where particularly the audience here, as I understand, youth are not getting an intellectual discussion on certain topics. So it's really good that we have such a discussion, and this organizing group who have taken that initiative. So thank you for inviting me at the first instance. I come from a public health discipline, and although in the university we are very much with the working with the community, and over 2 decades of very closely working with the community, and what I would like to share here would be going from the observations that we have, basically from top, not top, but from the beneath, from community, and to communicate and convey those to the top. So what we don't have at the moment is, most of the time we are working with the top-down approach rather than getting and feedback from the community, at least for things that have been implemented in relation to health. So coming to the topic, and I don't need that I should overemphasize the importance of health. At this juncture, if you look at around, not in only in Sri Lanka, across the globe, the importance of health and the engagement that we need to have with it is extremely clear. But the question that I would be posing again and again here is, although we know the importance of health, to what extent have we placed in the highest level of priority list in our hearts, in the work, and in other policy decisions? and whether health is being shifted down even in a chaotic situation like this for other reasons. So these are the things that I would be trying to touch briefly within the next few interventions that we'll have. And particularly from global point, generally we were looking health as a public good. And health and well-being and what we are looking at psychological well-being and so on, they were public good for a long time. But we now see that this notion of public good is somewhat shifting to a private good. Maybe due to the global political order, economic order, and we see in a country like ours, which had so-called, I would rather say, free health system for over now 80 to 90 years in this country, to what extent health is free? And if you're going through the main objective here, the right to health, and looking from a rights approach, are we actually have right to health, and to what extent? And what is the ground level, I would rather say, movement to achieve that? Just to give 2 or 3 points at the beginning, if you look at our constitution in this country, do we have right to health in our constitution? I'm afraid it's not. So in that case, what right that are we talking about? It's a given right or a right that we are having aspirations to gain. So in such manner, this type of dialogue is extremely important to actually put certain, I think, inject certain things to the minds of youth to go for intellectual discussion. How are we really going to achieve it? It's clear that in the SGD, which is the focus of this whole program, we have 9 key areas of goals and about 4 other thematic areas. When we go to goal 3, have we looked at achieving this in a different way, or are we still looking at the traditional way of achieving this, which we may have not gone through to the full extent? If you look at from 1978, Alma-Ata Declaration, if you know from the primary care approach, we were to achieve at least ambitious project of year 2000, health for all. Where have we failed? Are we in the same pathway? We are putting SGD goals for 230. Are we in the same pathway, trying to get it to that level, to the same traditional approaches, or are we taking a different approach to engage people and to make sure that they are also part of this journey and not just providing health, but achieving health, gaining health by a rather a participatory approach? These are the issues, I think, really key issues. In 2021, we have 9 years to go. We have gone 6 years already. Are we there on track? And if we are on track, are we on track with the correct methodology and dynamically looking at where we are going wrong and what are the remedies that we can inject into the process to achieve at least some of these by 2030. So this is my initial thing which I want to tell. Apart from that, just one thing what I want to tell, because of the COVID, I think the whole health, I would rather say the discourse has changed. What is health? What do we expect? Can we achieve these goals when the whole thing is coming to a new normal or a distorted normal? So we need to look at that in a very clear manner. So 1.5 years, what is the financing situation? What finances is possible? What are the issues that we are seeing from the government side? What is the involvement of the private side? And whether COVID has given additional advantage for commercializing of health, where the rights-based approach of health will have a very tough fight to gain and get health as a priority again as a public good. So these are the areas that I would like to just put in as the initial comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Veer Singha. Thank you very much. And may I also ask you, let me start off with you in terms of the barriers, actually. You were talking about stuff that is holding us back. What do you think is holding us back? And compared to the region, especially the South Asian region, we boast, okay, we have like one of the highest life expectancy rates. We have our primary healthcare system, our PhD, midwives, all of those people are in place and beautifully functioning. And that's one of the reasons where we were also able to an extent, in the first and the second phases of COVID-19, we were able to manage. So in your perspective, what is holding us back? What are the barriers?
Yes, it's a very difficult question if you ask, but if you look at the COVID situation and getting health a priority, just for example, in the political and economic thinking, where does health come? Will the decision makers place immense, I would say immense trust on health in building a nation again, or will pull back health a bit and will see that the economy is the best and the most priority to make sure that health will also go in line. So these decisions are complex, I understand, but one of the key things that we understand is, have we given health the due place in the long-term planning post-COVID? And if so, have we looked at infusing funds, resources to health in a way that we can sustain it to the future? Or are we investing in health just to make sure that the daily business is being taken care of? So that is a major issue. What I'm telling that is, if we are thinking that the large amount of money that we are just infusing into health beyond the expected budgetary allocations, are we actually thinking the effects of it for next 5 years or 10 years, or are we only trying to do what we need to do at the short term for next 1 week to get out of the situation? So these are things that have major questions. That is one. Second one, I would rather say, can we get out of this mess by top-down approach only? Can we only get out of this mess only by dictating terms to the citizens? Or do we have to engage people to be a participatory and a contributing fraction for as a part of solution? Or are we from the top giving solutions for them to adhere, which we know will be about 25%, 30% of adherence, but less 70% will not adhere. So if we can get at least the participatory approach into these planning mechanisms and cycles, even in this COVID mitigation, there would be more benefits to the country for the future. But now what we are doing is, we are rather having more, I would rather say, not only in this country, but majority of the countries, we are trying to get things through a very narrow scope of health and try to make sure that the health is improved. But health, if you look at, although it's third goal, all 17 goals, if you look at, it cut across. So can you achieve just compartmentalizing health and giving a top-down approach and try to do it? So these are the main two issues that I see here. The third one, I would rather say, is the role of media, role of social media, both, and what we are talking about, the epidemic or information epidemic. To what extent are we going to give actual figures, actual information to the people and to get their cooperation? Or are we going to enforce things in the people's mind from a fear psychosis or telling everything is right? These are the two extremes. But how have it worked? For first and the second, I think, rounds in this country, first round, the fear psychosis worked. But by the second, people were saying that it's not working. Then there were other things coming in to the media and distractors came. And when we come to the third cycle now, there is no tools. Fear psychosis doesn't work. Distractors, people understand these are fully distractors. And the communication experts are running out of tools. How are we going to get the people? Nobody is thinking, how are we going to engage people in the effort of mitigation? And that is lacking. I think these three is extremely important because all other goals in SGD, if you look at MCH, if you look at non-communicable diseases, if you look at other issues as mental health, all are suffering because of these three barriers, because MCH is not the case now. We have achieved a lot, but we could go back on these goals. We have achieved on NCDs, but the hospital clinics you can't approach. So the people who are already diagnosed will have a problem of accessing hospitals. Those who are at risk will not get services. So all those things we will be backtracking again, and we will have a real issue in at least 1 year or 2 years to see that we may have controlled COVID, but what about rest of health, psychological health? Children, as Professor Ettiketty would approach that. What about the mentality of the grade 1 student who enrolled last year, and for last 1.5 years to almost 2 years now, they're at home? What about the school environmental things where the psychologically students have sports? No sports. They are sedentary lifestyles in front of a computer. What about the social interactions that is to be developed in a school environment?
Exactly.
That is totally out. So students can become more selfish. They can be isolated. They're not eccentric, but very introvert people. So what would be the next 10 years trajectory in this country if you look at that?
Fabulous analysis. Thank you so much, Professor. Fabulous analysis. And now I would like to invite Your Excellency to discuss about the current barriers and the potential barriers that you see in terms of hunger and clean water. We know that in Sri Lanka, we see that towards the rural communities, people actually is struggling to find clean water. So we are talking in the midst of the pandemic, we are talking about wash your hands. But where do you find water? Yes, so Your Excellency, over to you.
Well, I'll just keep my comments very brief. As we know, most state and institutions lack the resources. In this case, of course, in Sri Lanka and much in my country and the rest of our other member states, well, India being an exception in terms of its increased resources, but then India is also a much larger population. As a result, it lacks the resources to really, get a clean, fresh water on a sustainable basis to its populations. And one of the things that we recently discussed here at SAKEP was how to harvest rainwater, especially in rural areas. Here in Sri Lanka, for example, and as well as the rest of South Asia, during the monsoons, a lot of rainwater, or in case of the mountainous member states of SAKEP, Afghanistan, Bhutan, and Nepal, it always snows during long winters, and so much snow accumulates on the mountains that ultimately melt and drain down. But unfortunately, in those countries as well, a lack of resources prevent them from, building the catchment systems, reservoirs, and other, tertiary mechanisms to first, conserve and of course then distribute and then use. So I will really look into this, but I think I would say it's a matter of first resources and second effective and efficient management, both at the state level as well as collaboration and cooperation with the private sector and as well as with the people, how to work on the one hand internally within the state institutions as relevant, as responsible, and then have them work with the private sector and as well as with the people, especially in lower areas, and as well as with the NGO community to work with the local communities on, for example, harvesting rainwater on a sustainable basis to meet their needs, which not only cuts on the cost of spending for water, but also it helps ensure free water that's clean if it is done properly.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. And I would like to now move into Chavi. Chavi, if you look at the Sri Lankan context, we see a lot of hurdles set out for women. And one such is the workload, the unpaid work that she has to do. We say 3 burden that she's carrying. So that has not really been captured in any of the analysis. So as a result, whatever women go out there and perform, it's not being captured. So we are not being valued equally. So those are like huge barriers that we have. And on the same time, we have things like violence against women, sexual harassment. All that is, especially during this COVID-19 time, we tell people to go home, stay at home. But when the home, because we want this world to be safe, but when the home is not safe for women, what do they do? Chavi, over to you. So the barriers and what you face and what your experience about this.
Yeah, so the barriers and also I would like to speak about some solution. The barriers, of course, we know that, like I mentioned already about the unpaid work, childcare, or we're talking about domestic work has been huge on women. So here, if we see that with the pandemic, the nation has to come together to understand this the effect on gender. From the gender lens, one has to evaluate and accept the fact that pandemics has affected men and women differently. That acceptance has to come, and then get stock of the human resource and the finances to see that there has to be proper budget to handle this whole portion of our SDG 5 goal. We have to actually allocate that. And we know that these are some issues. So from nutrition to protection, where we talk about gender-based violence, we're talking about health, and in health, we're talking about physical, normal general health, we're talking about sexual and reproductive health, we're talking about, of course, mental health, where my peer has already spoken about the importance of emotional well-being, and mental health is huge. I mean, we know that and you already have said about the triple burden, which has gone much more than what it was earlier. So looking at these things, all of these parameters of the woman in women's life, all these indicators have to be looked at deeply. And of course, there are expert organizations like yours who can contribute hugely to give technical advice how to lay down the entire plan. But it doesn't stop there. We know that we can make policies, we can make provisions, but we have to ensure it reaches the last mileage. So that is a very huge thing. So how a woman doesn't get abused, how a woman gets that right to her various things, be it education, be it work-life, be it work participation, her voices. So, the entire thing about women able to speak up and having these platforms where her voices can be shared and everyone can listen to what she wants to say from a different strata of the society. A platform has to be made. Then a behavioral change is a huge component where we know we come from a society where the work, especially again, I'm coming back to unpaid work and different, discrimination norms. They're looked at very differently. It's perceived it's a woman's. It comes under woman to take care of all these things. So a behavioral change aspect has to be introduced. Those tools have to be put, and the family. There has to be some communication materials and continuation of these communication material where bombardment of different messages come that it is a shared responsibility and it is not just a woman's responsibility. So I'm talking about a proper strategy has to be formed where we look at in some years comes to the share as a shared responsibility, just not as a woman responsibility. And how do we do that? Once we reach there, we have to monitor, we have to evaluate where are we reaching, what are the gaps, what needs more work, what we are missing out. So I think it has to be done. All these angles, and similarly for the domestic violence, which is so huge. I mean, to make the gender transformative society today, I think lots have to be done. We have, and there are enough experts, like again, you are here, your organization, I'm sure there are going to be more of them who can give out an amazing plan. So a technical partners need to combine with the government, giving them a plan, and then having a very robust the monitoring and evaluation tools using technology. We today the biggest strength of our century is the technology. It's a double-edged sword. Here we should use it in the benefit of humankind, in the benefit of the women and child and men, and let's make better societies together. That's what I just wanted to share. Thank you.
Amazing thoughts, Chavi. Because you are talking about a strategy. We have gender mainstreaming. We are taking a lot of programs as part of gender mainstreaming, and we are like putting it out there. We are championing that. Then we are like aligning men as our change agents, champions for the cause, and we are doing a lot of things. But you are talking about a very, very important thing here, which is a regional strategy to champion women's, not only women, it's gender altogether, gender equality and empowerment, and not leaving anyone behind. So that's very important. So maybe in our next round, please shed some more light as to how we can formulate this strategy together, and what aspects in terms of the strategy we should include, and how to basically get it down to actionable level. So thank you so much, as usual, Chavi, for that wonderful information and views. Now I would like to move on to Professor Siri Hettige. Professor, I know you have great deal of experience and exposure working with our kids and working within the education system. But Sri Lanka, this is something personally I felt. I think we say in a proud way, oh, we have this highest literacy rate, and we stop with that. But we don't dig in to see the quality of that literacy level. How much do we really value other aspects, like how happy people are in our education system, how innovative our people are, how cohesively we work together, and how much do we tolerate others, tolerate levels, patience levels. I have a problem in really gauging, have we really achieved all of these things? What are the real barriers, sir, that you see in our education system, and how do we address these things? Professor.
Yeah, Sustainable Development Goal number 4, quality education. I mean, the word quality, I think, is very important here because, it's not just education for the sake of, improving, let's say, life chances of people who go through the system, or making sure that they can read and write and so on. I think we have to really go very far in trying to understand how education should be, looked at and addressed in terms of, making best use of education for the welfare of the entire society, not just the people who benefit from education directly. Then when you look at, I would like to, go back and forth a bit. First, when the moment you look at number 4, you just run through the rest and you realize that, this particular goal has a bearing on a whole range of other issues, whole range of other goals. I mean, I can, give you a few very, very, very clearly, but then of course there are also, now for instance, you see, you cannot talk about, let's say, decent employment unless you, have quality education being imparted by the education system. And then when you look at peace in society, social cohesion, there again, you really cannot have, peace and, tranquility, social cohesion, unless you have the education system preparing, young people, children and young people for, a society, which is cohesive, which is peaceful, and so on and so forth. And then when you look at, other goals, you can see similar connections. I don't want to waste too much time on that. But then I think we'll have to probably backtrack a bit, because before we came to SDGs, you all know, we were talking about, human development. And basically human development relied on 3 pillars. One was, of course, education, and the other was health. And then, of course, the third one was income, per capita income, or whatever you want to call it, the economy. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that, that we were boasting about a very high level of human development in South Asia, we are the number 1. And also, people, talked about Sri Lanka, in the 1970s and 80s and 90s, as a country that has done very well in terms of human development. But then, these are the three factors that went into this. Now, the point is that there we looked at literacy, and you made the point. But today, when we talk about, education, we just don't talk about literacy. We talk about not only reading and writing skills, we talk about a whole range of other literacies. Because if you don't have the other literacies, you cannot fit into a modern society. I mean, for instance, how can you think about, being functional in the present world if you are not digitally literate? So digital literacy is very critical. Then, you have to have scientific literacy. You can't understand the world around you unless you have scientific literacy. Then environmental literacy is so critical, because if you don't have environmental literacy, you don't really, understand what's really happening around in the environment and so on. Like that, you can go on and on. So we are talking about a whole range of other literacies. It's not. And then, of course, literacy, we in this country meant basically literacy in your own native language. But we know that if you have no second language, I mean, you have absolutely no chance to really communicate with your fellow citizens, because, they don't speak the language that you speak, because, we did not promote bilingualism and trilingualism within our education system. So the point is that when you really, go back to human development, there we realize the huge limitations, huge barriers. The point that I'm trying to make is that we did not invest in education, in a significant way in this country for a long time. 1.6% of the GDP is not even 1/2 of what you should have, for a country like Sri Lanka. I mean, minimum of 3% of the GDP. But you know that many countries, have much higher. But the fact of the matter is that we have maintained this very low public investment in education for a long time, leading to what? Leading to a decline in the quality of education and also inequality in education. Because when you don't maintain educational quality across the board, people with the resources move away from that public system. And therefore, you have a highly unequal education system in Sri Lanka today. It's not only because of this low investment, but also because of other policies that were adopted and so on. So the point is that education, then we go further back, and we had a kind of a golden era, if you like, around the time of independence, when we were on the right path, not only to create equitable education, but also make sure that other issues connected with education are also addressed. Like, for instance, the language issue. Because, as you know, language issue is a huge problem that has created not only problems for the individual, but also for the entire society. Because, this language policy in education, medium of instruction, led to a de facto segregated education system in Sri Lanka. So we have maintained a segregated education system for the last 50 years. Now, we have paid a huge price, because when society is segregated, you know what I mean. You are preparing the ground for any kind of conflict, you see, both within a particular community or across communities and so on. So what I'm getting at is that we have to basically address these issues if we were to really fit into the sustainable framework of development. Because if you don't do it, you will not only fail to achieve educational goals in a very broad sense. It is not just preparing people for employment. So you will not be able to achieve many other goals in the country. Therefore, if you really want to achieve your sustainable development goals, you will have to concentrate on education, and you will have to certainly do a great deal of thinking as to how you could fashion your education system through policies and interventions, and of course public investment and so on and so forth, so that you will be able to not only achieve educational goals, but also help achieve other goals for Sri Lanka. And of course, now we have I just say one more word, and that's about the pandemic. And the pandemic has really disrupted everything. And of course, education system has been, very, very badly disrupted. And of course, that has magnified the inequality within the education system, because, now we are talking about online teaching and so on and so forth. In a country where you have a huge digital, divide, we have seen it being played out on our television. Thank you very much.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Professor. And even to talk about, you were talking about different facets of literacy. What about digital, just like the digital, the financial literacy? Our people are like in debt. The country is in debt, and our people.
I consider other literacy more important than financial literacy. I'm not saying that it's not important, but when you look at the problems that we are faced with in this country, it is basically due to lack of scientific literacy, digital literacy, environmental literacy, and so on and so forth. People don't get agitated on environmental issues because they don't really understand, the gravity of the environment problem that we are facing, that the ambassador, talked about. You understand. So the point is, the purpose of education is not to prepare young people for the employment market. That of course is important, but I think it has a much bigger role. In 1916, there was this seminal publication, by an educational philosopher in the United States, John Dewey. It was titled Democracy and Education. In fact, you can't have a functioning democracy unless you have a good education system. It is as simple as that. Like we have our democratic system has come under enormous pressure, mainly because we did not prepare our citizens, to function in a democratic environment because people don't have the democratic values. You see, that's why we have a huge political crisis in the country because people cannot fit into a democratic framework because we have not prepared them for that kind of a social environment. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Professor. That's really beautiful. That's really beautiful thoughts. And with that, the Road to Rights have invited some of the celebrated Sri Lankans to line up as ambassadors in championing the Sustainable Development Goals and to spread the word about SDGs and to put it into action, champion the SDG goals. Sustainable Development Goals. So let us now go into a video where they pledge and they champion the Sustainable Development Goals.
Let us strengthen the way we achieve these goals of sustainable development around the globe.
Join us
as we
uplift the lives of many, improving human health and restoring the environment,
empowering women
and protecting children whilst creating a
sustainable nation for all. Together, let's action to impact.
Thank you very much. Welcome back. And now we would like to talk a bit about the strategic perspective. What can we have given sort of like an introduction to each of these Sustainable Development Goals. We have discussed about the hindrance factors, the problems, the challenges surrounding these problems. Now let us talk about solutions. What sort of strategies can we propose and how do we ensure these strategies can be actioned at the grassroots level? Because we actually talk about these things. We sometimes develop policies, but nothing gets done, nothing gets achieved. So why is that happening? So that's also a question that we need to basically talk about as well. So I would like to basically go on to Professor Veerasinghe. Professor, if you can shed some light in terms of a strategy, in terms of what we can do to basically champion, basically to address the three-pillar hindrance framework you just mentioned, and how do we move forward? What is your proposed strategy?
Okay, thank you. I think there are no straightforward answers to many of the questions that I already posed at the beginning. One thing from the right-based approach, I'm not sure to what extent this country and the people understand they have right to health. If you look at rights to health, is health a right of mine? What can I achieve, what can I demand, and so on. So basically, people as a collective body or a community as a collective body, to what extent they understand that they have a right. And that has to be really looked at in a more broader way. I'm not talking about just having movements and trying to have protests and so on. Internally, people need to understand I have a right to health. Therefore, health needs to be a prioritized item in my daily agenda. And not only me, my family's agenda, then the community's agenda, which would finally push the policy makers, bureaucracy and the policy makers to take it as a serious agenda. One could say, no, we have a Minister of Health, we are doing so many things, whatever. But if you really look at an ordinary citizen in this country, where can he place health? For example, when we ask people, why you didn't come to the last month's clinic and why you defaulted the clinic, for example, a patient of diabetes. They could tell that it was not possible, one, that he did not have at least the money or the funds to come to the clinic because he did not have work for so many days and he is coming from a distance. He can't afford to come to the clinic, so he just ignored. Or there are other issues in the workplace and so on in the family that is more priority than his health. That is why he did not come. So I just going to give this very simple example to show that when people understand rights and when people understand it's a priority, the things that we can do is much bigger than when they don't. As I think I just try to connect what Professor Hettige was teaching about literacy. In this country, there are so many studies done on health literacy, sir. What we understand, it's not very high. For the main reason we have done some work, what we see is literacy is taken as read and writing, but not applied literacy. Applied literacy is how can you use your understanding or your ability to read and write in order to have a more productive life. But how you transform that literacy into a productive life is the gap between the literacy and the applied literacy. That is very low. One is because of education system. Second one is the very, I would rather say, unfortunately, a lethargic health education system. In the school, what we are looking at till grade 10, everyone has some subjects, maybe science or health and physical activities, but it is for the exam. This is not directed to improve your health as a major goal in your life. So when you have done the term test, you forget it. When you pass your year, you forget it. So there is no link. So the teachers are pushed to teach to get good results, but not good healthy people in this country. So this is a serious issue. If you look at university also, what interventions do we have on health? So whatever, if you are going to health as a priority, things should come from the home to school to the higher education and so on. There is no point of at the end we are trying and blaming people. You have not taken the vaccine. You have not gone to the clinic. You have not done this, that and the other. So this is the blame culture, which is a very negative aspect of getting health a priority. That is one. Second one, same as Professor Hettige said about 1.6 for education, what is the actual GDP from the government side for health? It's going down. It was maximum in 2006 or 7 of 2%. It is going down. This year it can go up because of the infuse for the vaccines and other things, but it does not mean that you have adequate funds to develop the rest of the health sector. So because of that, out-of-pocket expenditure now, if you look at the private expenditure, is more than 50% of the people. So when people don't have funds, we are asking them to take health as a priority. So how can they do that? So these are issues. Thirdly, I would like to have some very clear statement in the country like ours, because our health indicators have been going up because of certain public health measures that we have taken for last 8 years. But when this public good to a private good shift is to be seen now, we may be going back on the same issues, because people who can afford will afford, people who can't afford will not afford, and we can't afford, and that will take us back maybe to 1970s and 80s level by 2030 or 35 rather than achieving our goals. So these are major issues. And two other things that I want to tell you, looking at the strategies, basically from the health side, if you look basically at COVID now, do we have a strong communication strategy in this country to make people aware on the actual situation on the ground and get their support? Afraid I don't see that. do we trust the spokesman coming in for any organizations or the government and telling things? What trust the general public have on them? That vacuum is filled by many others, including social media. Then we are going to blame the social media. But issue is there's a vacuum, that vacuum is created, so others are filling in. And that may be the reason there is some vaccine hesitancy that we see. There is some myths going. There is people are going all directions for maybe unscientific things because of the vacuum created, and still we are not filling the vacuum by formal education systems and formal health education and promoting strategies. So these are issues that we may have to seriously look at. And I would like to conclude by stating health have deep connections to all others, as the ambassador said, to water, to environment, then the gender issues. If the mother doesn't have a deciding power on the kid's health, when to take to the hospital, how to do things, then how can the health of a family could be improved? In Sri Lanka, the majority of the time we have seen our studies that the females have a major stake in health care and health decision making, but we need to improve it in certain communities. So these are all that we may have to really seriously think about if we are going to change our strategies for the future in order to achieve anything by 2030. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Now, I would like to invite Professor Siri Hettige. Sir, if you would like to shed some light in terms of, you spoke about many issues that we face in the education system, and also education system, or rather education quality, education, access to quality education is central to a lot of SDGs. So in that light, what sort of solutions can we implement in terms of solving these problems, and how can we do it? How do we ensure those strategies or those solutions can be implemented?
Well, there are so many things, but I'll just concentrate on a few things. I think the most important thing is to make sure that you have certain minimum standards within the system. You can't have huge disparities. I mean, there's no bottom line. You can have let's say schools with almost no facilities. You see, it's just building and classroom and a teacher. But the point is that school should have basic minimum facilities. I think that we have not been able to really ensure in this country. So in other words, we have schools even in the public system which are very privileged. I mean, not just in Colombo, but also in the larger cities in the country. I know that for a fact because I was in Galle. So the point is that the moment you go out, into the countryside, you really don't have the same conditions that the privileged children enjoy in more privileged environment. So now that I think is a huge problem, because you see, you don't create an equal level playing field within the education system. So now, unless and until you overcome that problem, I don't think that you can really create equal opportunities. And this sustainable development agenda is leave no one behind. I think we will continue to leave so many, not one, but so many people behind within the education system. The second thing is the institutional landscape in this country. I mean, we have a very dense institutional landscape. We have so many institutions, at different levels and so on and so forth. Now the problem is, how do we revamp this, institutional framework in order to achieve our goals? Now, for instance, we have on the one hand a huge diversity of institutions horizontally. like, line ministries, various institutions, horizontally. And then you also have, very wide-ranging institutions vertically. Like, for instance, you have, let's say, at a local level, institutions like, local councils, and then, administrative officers, and so on and so forth. But the point is that this institutional landscape is very much driven by the center. In other words, it's highly centralized and driven by, driven by people at the center. Now you can see this pandemic. How do we manage the pandemic? Where is the community-based, arrangements to address, pandemic related, not just the health issue, but other issues as well. There are so many other issues as well. So the point is that we haven't empowered the local institutions, whether they are political, administrative, or anything else. So the point that I'm trying to make is that we have to revisit this institutional landscape and see how we could rationalize this, how we could make best use of the resources we have at our disposal in terms of human resources as well as other facilities and so on. And the third thing, of course, is, at the end of the day, unless you get the people to, come to terms with these issues, and that is through public awareness, public education, and so on and so forth. And of course, the media has a very big role to play. But the media in this country do not really help us to, address some of the pressing issues. I think the media. So, and then of course, civil society organizations. So I think the point is that we have to really bring all these things together in some way so that we will have the synergy. We will have, basically a cumulative impact, on the ground situation, so that it will be changed for the better. So I think we have, these are of course broad strategies that we have to address. But I think unless and until we come to terms with these challenges and problems, and see how best we could revamp the entire machinery, we would not be able to really achieve the sustainable development goals. In particular, in this case, of course, we are talking about achieving quality education.
Thank you, Professor. Your Excellency, now I would like to invite you to share some of your, you have been like a veteran doing a lot of work, especially in the Asian, especially in the South Asian and the Asian region. So we would love to hear from you about your experience, your exposure working and championing clean water and hunger related issues from the region, and also how can the world come together? I know you have worked on an international platform, so how can the world come together, sir, to solve these issues?
Well, on water and hunger, unfortunately, as we know, our planet Earth is blessed and endowed with adequate resources to feed the whole world's population, but unfortunately we know how resources are distributed among the countries of the developed and developing, least developed, and I would say even war-ravaged countries like Afghanistan. So that is at the heart of the problem, and there are of course many state and international multilateral institutions to help address this. Of course, the very raison d'etre of the Sustainable Development Goals, based on the Millennium Development Goals, was and is to help ensure that resources are adequately, and efficiently distributed, be it within state institutions or when it comes to provision of international aid and support from developed countries to those in need, and as well as the institutions in place, from relief to recovery to development, multilateral institutions. Look at the family of the United Nations. You have UNICEF, you have UNHCR, the WHO, and others more or less, relief to recovery in frontline. But Then you have the World Bank and UNDP and others who provide longer-term development and financial support to countries in need. So I could also, say one reason why, unfortunately, the world, on the one hand, well, we have the resources that we need to address the problem of water and hunger. Unfortunately, we have not been able to. We're failing, but we have come a long way, and I think compared to decades earlier. But still, a lot of challenges still remain, and I think one reason has to do with the global aid system, which means that there is aid, there is of course support, but unfortunately the mechanisms in place are not, unfortunately, as efficient, as effective as they should be in order to implement aid effectively. For example, my own country, Afghanistan, tens of billions of dollars have been poured into the country, and yet we have 18 million Afghans as we speak facing a complex humanitarian crisis, abject poverty, which I'm not saying should have disappeared completely, but Afghans should have been enabled to stand on their own. So this is, as a result of not only aid and effectiveness, both civilian and military, but also then other factors such as, the external support in case of Afghanistan for insurgencies or, terrorist networks that destabilize the country. And the Afghan context, in the South Asian context, in Sri Lanka also went through 3 decades of, unfortunately, warfare and distraction and terrorism and so forth. But in case of Afghanistan, one is, of course, as I pointed out, aid ineffectiveness. The more larger problem is insecurity, which is very much imposed, and that has basically prevented the government of Afghanistan from building the capacities that as needed on the one hand, but also to then use the availability of international aid resources to build the kind of longer-term infrastructure projects to really help, grow a sustainable economy, addressing the problems of, hunger and water. As much as, like I pointed out earlier, the mountainous countries of South Asia are really blessed with so much snow that ultimately melts and needs to be, conserved and then reserved and used and on sustainable basis. But unfortunately, it's not in the case of my country, at least. It's because of this ongoing war. So there are many factors, I think, that come into the play as to why, the world as a whole has not been able to address this, problem of access to, clean water on the one hand, and as well as reduce and eliminate the problem of anger. That despite so many resources and so much of waste of food, if you look at how much food is wasted, I think academics would know this better. They're probably into tens of thousands of tons of food in developed countries. And I saw that firsthand how much food is actually wasted in developed countries from Europe to North America and others. And even in developing countries, as they become wealthy, unfortunately, the amount of food wasted and increases, while in other parts of the world, least developed countries, and those especially in war, like Afghanistan, people unfortunately face increased anger. So it's a matter of I think, outdated policies, and then institutional bottlenecks and weaknesses, bilateral and as well as multilateral, and then the also receiving states of these resources and their inability, either because of state weakness to implement, as well as weak governance and rule of law and corruption, but on the other hand, ongoing conflicts that actually prevent the implementation and the access to, implementing, from relief to recovery and sustainable projects. And as one of our colleagues also pointed out, to involve and to work with the local communities, every day on a routine basis, and building their capacities and benefiting them from both national resources and as well as aid resources from outside. So to put it in a nutshell, I think in countries where there is peace, but unfortunately there is weak governance and rule of law, that either internally and as well as externally they don't manage this. But in countries where both state weakness exists alongside, an ongoing war, like Afghanistan, with over, reliance on foreign aid, it's even much more complex, and as a result, people are much more vulnerable. People are much more, exposed, unfortunately, to hunger, to lack of clean water. Just now, because of the adverse effects of climate change, for example, Afghanistan, and so there's so many other countries we know have been hit by droughts or have been hit by climate-induced floodings. We saw that in Europe. We just recently saw that in China, and of course, in as well as in South Asia. But particularly in case of my country, when I just was there, but 2-3 months ago, 4,000 homes were basically demolished by these climate-induced floods. Arable land was destroyed. Livestock of the rural people, we know, how local rural people basically live on their land, and the livestock, everything was gone. And with that, whatever, wells that had been dug with the support of, foreign aid agencies like UNICEF and probably Habitat and UN Habitat and others were also destroyed. And so as a result, they've remained not only exposed to hunger, but also to a lack of, clean water, sanitation, and shelter. And especially these days, they've been displaced under, the conditions of conflict and COVID-19, where again, unlike other countries in South Asia, because of this ongoing conflict, have not been vaccinated, and as well as climate. So what has happened in case of Afghanistan and other countries to various degrees, rural people have been hit really hard by this convergence of climate, COVID-19, and conflict. And in the case of Afghanistan, right now we have all three. In other countries, we may have, climate and COVID. Now, do the state institutions themselves have the right coping mechanisms, the right institutions, the right preparedness, the right, amount of resources? I doubt that because unfortunately, that's not really foreseen the kind of, pandemic that we are experiencing. And examples were given here in Sri Lanka, the centralization versus decentralization of efforts. But in contexts like Afghanistan, not much has really happened, and as well as the rest of South Asia, I would say, including India, including, of course, Pakistan and Bangladesh and Nepal, where we've discussed with them, SOCEP. Often they talk about, lack of resources and a lack of, an institutional capacity to, even if they have the right policies and regulations and laws, but they don't really have neither have the resources nor the capacity to implement and enforce them. So an array of all those problems, but to be specific, I've mostly spoken generally, but to be specific, I think in the context of Sri Lanka, I see that I think the current government has done its best, I think, comparatively speaking, in the region. And outside this region, Southeast Asia, we are seeing, in Vietnam, which was really doing well in terms of managing and controlling at the center peripheral level. But now they have this huge outbreak where in Sri Lanka, yes, on and off, it has gone, numbers have gone up, but still, I think Sri Lanka has managed it from mostly the above using the military. But at the same time, I think I really haven't looked at where Sri Lanka is in terms of the bottom-up approach, in terms of connecting with the people and also working with the agencies on the ground to address the challenges it faces, including the pandemic. But I know there is awareness of this, especially following the 3 decades of war and the post-conflict peace building and rebuilding, and Professor might know better about these issues. But I think Sri Lanka has still done better, and there's always space for doing more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. That's a very comprehensive, I think, detailed out answer. Thank you so much. We are very grateful to you. And also to keep you informed that you can hashtag action to impact on Twitter and forward all your questions to this distinguished panel of the social forum of the Action to Impact campaign. Ask any question and we are more than happy to fire it off to the panel, but we are also very conscious of the time factor as well. Unfortunately, due to a technical issue, we have lost Chavi Bora. But in terms of the gender side, in terms of women's empowerment side, let me also state a remark. We always, one of the boiling problems for women is economic empowerment, economic independence. If a woman is economically independent, empowered, she will have a lot of access to a lot of the things that His Excellency is talking about in terms of hunger and in terms of clean water, getting all the necessities fulfilled, and also what Professor Siri Hettige was talking in terms of literacy, education, quality education, and also what Professor Veerasinghe is talking about in terms of wellness and being mindful and being happy at the end of the day. So economic empowerment is such a crucial thing, but also important for empowerment of women is their personal empowerment as well as their social empowerment. Give women a cushion to fall back. Networking, connectedness, right? All that is part of your social empowerment, and that is very, very crucial. On the same time, personal empowerment is the self-awareness. Tell them how to plan themselves, empower them personally so that they're strong enough to take on the challenges. So those are the three key pillars that we should concentrate on, especially when we should advocate for empowerment of women. So I was just, making that note on behalf of Chavi, on behalf of the Goal 5, which we would like to champion. Unfortunately, we have lost connection with her due to a technical fault. But now, since given the time that we have very limited time, so I would like to move on to some questions that have come through. Some have come through on Twitter. So Tarika is asking us, I think this question goes to Professor Siri Hettige. What are the most important educational problems in developing countries that leads to poverty? I think Professor briefly mentioned about these problems, but she's asking about what are the most important. I think she wants you to prioritize the core problems that lead to poverty. Professor, I think you are muted.
We look at it from Sri Lanka's perspective. I think one of the biggest problems that we face, in our education system, in the public education system in particular, is lack of any skill orientation. When I say skill, it's not job related skills. Skills of all kinds. Like for instance, social skills. And then the skills to learn. The point is that if you are in education for 10 years and if you leave and if you don't have the capacity to continue to learn, then you are stuck. And so the point that I'm trying to make is that we don't really concentrate on practical aspects of education. We only worry about examinations and how we could push the children from one examination to the next, and then from there to the university. That is academic education. I think that is not unimportant, but the point is that there has to be a parallel system whereby you also equip the young person with a set of skills that would prepare that person to fit into any environment that person finds himself or herself in. It may be employment, it may be working within the community, it may be being able to relate to the rest of the community. and so on and so forth. So the point is that I think we have to make a major shift away from this, over examination orientation to a more agile, more skill oriented, person. So I think that I think is critical. And I think the other point is, of course, your language skills. I think the main problem in Sri Lanka today in the public education system is that it has basically promoted monolingualism. Actually, that is that is really counterproductive from any angle you look at. Because we are living in a very, very globalized environment today and people move around. The point is that if you do not have the language skills, you are lost. And, you really cannot make headway. And you cannot really read what is there in the library, for instance. I mean, what is the use of moving up the educational ladder if you cannot really read what is available in the library? And then, of course, today we are talking about going online and accessing information from various, sources. Now that is a, world of information, world of knowledge, and you have no access to that huge, pool of, resource, educational and other resources, if you don't have the language skills. So what I'm getting at is that these are, very, very important issues that we have not been able to address within our education system. And I think the point that I made earlier is important. Unless and until you consider education as one of the most important public investments, not just in the younger population, but in the welfare of society as a whole, I don't think that we are going to really make much of a difference to education.
Thank you so very much, Professor. Thank you. I think we have got another question for His Excellency. According to the United Nations, nearly 1/3 of people globally lack access to safely managed drinking water services. Over half lack access to safely managed sanitation facilities. Hence, with the times to come post-COVID, people have many issues which should be looked after. Do you think people would be concerned, as they are currently, about sanitation and clean water by then? I think he's referring to the new normal conditions post-COVID. Your Excellency, I think you are muted. Thank you.
I think everyone should be concerned, the individuals across the world, and as well as state and institutions and their relevant bodies, and everyone should basically do their part, as far as I can think, in order to prepare better and build back better in the post-COVID-19. Of course, now we have built certain habits during the COVID, and especially when it comes to sanitation, washing hands, for example, which a lot of people knew even in the urban areas and even in developed countries, but they didn't really properly observe them. They didn't care about washing hands and personal sanitation and social distancing and so forth. Those habits that we have built should all be preserved, and habits that say, for example, have also meant polluting our environment, such as the use of plastics in order to manufacture all these masks. If all these masks are made of plastics, all the gloves are made, of course, of plastic, and as a result, the world during this pandemic has also consumed hundreds of thousands of millions of tons of plastics, which unfortunately have not been properly disposed of or recycled, and much of this is actually ended up in the open air, especially when it comes to here in South Asia, and not recycled, and as a result polluted both the land and air, and as well as even reaching the marine life. So there are some good practices and positives when it comes to health issues and sanitation, but also negatives that have happened during the this pandemic. And I think relevant institutions such as WHO has already been looking at this, already researching. There are many lessons already learned as to how we can, hang on to some habits and build upon them in the post-COVID-19, but at the same time do away with those that have been found to be polluting and counterproductive. And I think those studies encourage, especially youth leaders, and especially those that are watching us right now, to look at, because most of them are students, and they can do further research and build on that. And then once they're in a position of policy making and policy implementation, they can address these issues in the post-COVID-19, which we really at this time, we don't know when this pandemic would really end, given the new variants that are unfortunately coming into the environment and continue infecting humans around the world. So until that happens, I think it's good to be good observers, to learn, build on good habits as far as everything, the DGs that we've been discussing today, but also doing away with those that are not. And I think the best people to do that are the youth. I think the audience that are watching us, and they should be really leading the way moving forward.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And with that, I think that's all the time that we have. And it has been an amazing session. I think we have been flooded with a lot of compliments and also a lot of thoughts and questions. But unfortunately, we are out of time. We have run out of time. And a big thank you on behalf of Road to Rights. A big thank you to His Excellency Ashraf Haidani, the Afghanistan ambassador to Sri Lanka, and to Ms. Chavi Bora. Unfortunately, we lost her due to a technical fault, but the knowledge she has shared with us is amazing. To Professor Siri Hettige, sir, it has been a privilege. Thank you so very much. And to Professor Manush C. Veerasinghe, and Professor, thank you once again. For it's a beautiful 3-pillar strategy that you just spoke about. So thank you so much. Learned a lot from all of y'all, and it has been a privilege to moderate this social forum with such distinguished panel. And also a big thank you to Ashan Pereira. I think I met Ashan sometime back, an old friend, and he's such an enthusiastic person, driving and championing sustainable development goals, and such an honor to help you, Ashan, and very proud of you organizing such an amazing platform as well. So to all our viewers who have just tuned in, thank you so very much, and stay tuned with the Action to Impact campaign for such thoughtful, mind-provoking, fabulous sessions. Thank you very much from us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
මනුෂ්‍ය විදියට අපි හැමෝටම හීන තියෙනවා. ඒ හීන වලට යන්න කලින් අපේ මූලික මිනිස් අවශ්‍යතා අපි සපුරා ගන්න ඕනේ. හැබැයි ඒ මූලික මිනිස් අවශ්‍යතා සපුරා ගන්නටවත් බැරි තරමට දරිද්‍රතාවයෙන් පෙළෙන අසරණ මිනිස්සු මේ ලෝකේ අපේ රටේ කොතෙකුත් ඉන්නවා. අපිට මේ තිරසාර සංවර්ධන ඉලක්ක හරහා ඔවුන්ට ශක්තියක් වන්නට හැකිනම් දරිද්‍රතාවයෙන් පෙළෙන ඒ මිනිසුන්ට ශක්තියක් වෙන්නට හැකිනම් එය තමයි මනුෂ්‍ය විදිහට අපිට කරන්න පුළුවන් ලොකුම දේ. මටත් අවස්ථාවක් ලැබිලා තියෙනවා Road to Rights හරහා මේ Action to Impact ව්‍යාපෘතිය හරහා දරිද්‍රතාවයෙන් පෙළෙන අපේම ශ්‍රී ලාංකිකයන්ට උදව් කරන්න, අත්වැලක්වන්න. ඉතින් මගේ රසික රසිකාවියන්ට මම ඊටාම ආදරයෙන් ආරාධනා කරනවා එන්න අපිත් එක්ක එකතු වෙන්න දරිද්‍රතාවෙන් තොර ශ්‍රී ලංකාවක් ලෝකයක් බිහි කරන්න.
I feel privileged to be a part of this initiative and to represent goal number 2, which is zero hunger. So I believe I'll be able to give out my best in achieving this goal. As we all know, hunger is a big problem, not in just our nation, but around the globe. Wherever we are in the world, hunger is the most common factor to any human being. I can't do this alone, so I hope all my followers will support me in achieving this goal, which is zero hunger.
Hi everyone, I'm Stephanie Sirivardhana and I'm the Road to Rights brand ambassador for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 4, which is the right to quality education. I support the right to quality education because every child, every human has the right to have the knowledge and to gain the tools necessary to live the life of their dreams, to make their dreams a reality. Because when you have access to quality education, so whether it's vocational training, primary school, higher education, this is what defines the satisfaction you get out of the life we are living. And everyone should have the opportunity to live the life of their dreams and to feel empowered, to feel confident, and to feel that they are in control of their destiny. And this is why I support access to quality education, and I believe that together we can make this a reality. So join me as we take this step forward and work together to make sure that everybody has access to quality education. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Dushyant Pridaman and I am the Road to Rights brand ambassador for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 5, gender equality. I believe that no one should be discriminated based on their gender. We need to eliminate all sorts of discrimination and violence in both public and private spheres whilst creating equal opportunity for all. Together, we can make this a reality.
Hi guys, I am Raini Gunatilaka and I am the Celebrity Ambassador for goal number 6, clean water and sanitation. Let me start off by just saying how important this goal is to me. This goal connects to me in a personal level because my mom was raised in a very rural area and I used to visit the hometown as a kid, her hometown, and I was able to see a lot of things that people went through, and lots of my cousins who lived in that area didn't have the same things as I did, the basic stuff like clean water and sanitation. And I always thought to myself as a kid, because it really hit me hard, as to why people didn't have access to these things, and I thought that everybody just had it, you know, as a kid. And growing up, I realized that not everyone is as blessed. But then again, these are basics. I don't think that someone needs to be blessed enough to have these things, you know, because these are just human things that everyone needs to have. And for a very long time, I did things on my own, little things that I can do, even by saving water, because that is also a reason why people don't have access or don't have enough. And that's where it all started. And when I was reached with this goal system, I was ecstatic. I was so happy to know that there is something worthwhile out there who's trying to really fight for this, fight for something that I've been taking baby steps for. So I think this is a good platform for me as well to just reach out to people and maybe influence them to do right things and maybe follow goals and you know, just achieve them. So the reason why we need to follow these goals and to achieve these goals is that if we do achieve these goals successfully, not only Sri Lanka, but the entire world, all human beings, all living things in this world is gonna be impacted. It's an impact that we can't stop because it's just gonna roll on, and I can't I can't put into words how happy I am when I even think about it. It's something really integrated into myself that I really need to achieve something. I will work hard as an ambassador for this, because I don't want to be just an ambassador just for the name. And clean water and sanitation and all other goals are extremely important. They're well integrated to each other. And the reason why it's separated is because it's easy to follow on one goal and just work on that whilst everybody else is working on the others. So guys, let's get educated about all these goals and what each one does and what we need to do in order to change ourselves and the world, because these goals can give us a better future, a better nation, a better world. And I think as human beings, as living things, as youngsters of this generation, it's our responsibility as human beings. And sometimes a lot of people start wondering why you were born onto this earth. And some people say, I still haven't found my goal, or I haven't found the reason why I'm here. And maybe this is the reason why you're here. Maybe this is what you were put on this earth for, to fight for people, to really fight for all the correct things so that human beings can really get the basics of their needs, and like food, energy, clean water, sanitation, employment. These things are basics, guys, and I think maybe this is the reason for life on earth for you, in order to fight for these and win these for everybody everybody in the world. So thank you guys for having me, and thank you SCG, Road to Rights, everybody, and it's lovely to meet all of you. And I really hope, I don't want to take too long because everybody has something to say about their goal, and I'm so ecstatic. And let's work together, guys. We can do this. We can win. We can win. God bless you all. Love you. Thank you.
Sustainable Development Goals. I am representing number 16. My name is Danu. Thank you so very much for making me a part of it to Road to Rights as an ambassador, and I'm so happy to champion this cause. We live in a country where corruption, injustice has been taking front page. It has taken the center stage when it comes to so openly done, so carelessly done, so done in a way that we do not even question it. Injustice at any level is always something that breaks our hearts. That doesn't give us the value of peace to enjoy. Injustice from a school level, injustice on a communal level, injustice on a government level, injustice on a global level. All of this have a huge impact in the way we live life. As the young generation and the generation that I represent, I really hope that this country and the world can always promote a wonderful thing called justice, wonderful thing called transparency, and a wonderful thing called peace. We together can do this and achieve this goal and make new waves in this world. So join hands as I take this upon myself to create more awareness in the little way that I can. Of course, with your support and your guidelines and your guidance that will help me achieve this. Thank you so very much for putting your trust in me, and I'm so honored to take this cause and see it through. So let's fight for the right